Welcome to a live Third Apron podcast. I'm Yossi Goslin, host of the Third Apron show, NBA salary cap analyst, and joining me as usual to react to all the moves that happened, Sam Quinn from CBS Sports. I have to look at the thumbnail to remember everything that's happened. The Celtics basically went ahead and did everything. Not everything, but maybe like 75% of the work they needed to do. The Mavs have gotten really busy. Their offseason seems to be like also maybe 80% done. We have a Jordan Poole for CJ McCollum trade. Sam, are we safe for the next hour or so? Will there be any big moves?
I hope we are. I'd really like to just talk in peace and absorb everything that happened now and not have to figure any new stuff out on the fly. I was looking at the thumbnail and I saw Daniel Gafford. I'm like, oh yeah, he extended. That was, 4.5 moves ago or something. I think the Celtics did everything they need to do. The Mavs did, well, the Mavs are a whole other set of issues. Now we kind of get into the fun stuff of the predictable portion of the offseason is over and the stuff that happens hereafter gets a little bit more chaotic. So today we're kind of eating our vegetables a little bit and talking about the second apron and setting up attacks mid-level and blah, blah, blah. But everything tomorrow, I feel like almost anything is on the table now.
Well, I was just telling you off, right before we started this, this kind of reminds me of 2009. We had a bunch of huge trades right before draft day. There was a Vince Carter trade. There was a Shaq to the Cavs trade. I'm sure there's a couple more. I think there was like 4 big trades. Or there might be, I think a Richard Jefferson to the Spurs. So even for that time, that was like a lot of big moves. And this really feels like July 1st. I mean, June 30th. So just a lot of moves that most of these really can't be official until July 6th. But yeah, the fact that the Celtics got all this done within before the end of the month, they've already got most of their expenses settled. I'm impressed that they were able to do all this. What's your biggest takeaway with the way the Celtics have come away with this?
They did it so quickly that now they can kind of do anything else that they want. So they're below the second apron, to be clear. I get my numbers from you, so if they're wrong, it's your fault. I think they're 4.5 million below the second apron now. So even kind of within spitting distance of the first apron. But now you kind of have some time where you can take a step back and say okay, what do we want to do next? Do we want to maybe duck the tax and try to reset our repeater clock a little bit? If you dump Sam Hauser into somebody's mid-level, you kind of get within range where maybe you could do that during the season or the follow-up move. The other thing is now we know that they're getting offers for Jaylen Brown and Derek White. They don't have to think about finances in those deals. They can just, if they were to trade those guys, and I don't think it's certain, but I think it's pretty possible, even in light of the moves they've already made, they can just say, we want the best possible asset return. We don't have to worry about getting below the second apron anymore. So getting it done this quickly basically means they've eaten their vegetables and now they can go have dessert. They can go do whatever it is they actually want to accomplish this offseason. The obvious stuff is done.
Yes, no, 100%. And that was something that I've been kind of anticipating, with that they can get most of their financial stuff done without having to trade Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, or Derek White. So I'll pull it up really quickly to show where it is. The big difference with my cap sheets, I'm putting a salary for the 32nd pick. The 32nd pick's arguably more valuable than the 28th pick because it's a cheaper salary, second round pick exception. But it probably is going to get the vet minimum, which is this amount. So when you put it all together, they went from a $277 million tax penalty to $69 million, and they're right below the second apron. So now, as far as financial stuff, do you want to get completely below the luxury tax? They're about $17 million above it. They don't need to trade Derek White to do that. They can package a combination of Sam Hauser and George Niang. Maybe they expand some of their trades that they've got going on, reroute Anfernee Simons to another team, and also save $20 million on the payroll like they did going from Porzingis to Niang. Maybe instead of taking Simons, you go from $32 million for Jrue for a $12 million player elsewhere. So I agree with you, and I am keeping my eye on Derek White. We got pretty contentious debate about how they should go about that. I guess it was mostly on a certain team's side about like whether that's a lot for him or not. But I agree. I think at this point, I'm sure they are listening to offers on Derek White, but it's no longer, hey, are we trying to save money? It's going to take somewhat of an overpay for another team to pry Derek White out of the Celtics.
I think Jaylen Brown, the price is, it starts at the Desmond Bane price, right? You're not trading Jaylen Brown without 4 picks in a swap or whatever equivalent young player value to that is. Derek White's a little bit lower, but the benefit of him being cheaper is that he's more accessible to a wide variety of teams. So like Derek White is what? He's like 28 million, something like that.
Yeah.
So almost anybody who needs a starting guard could feasibly fit him into their salary structure. Like, case in point, we're going to talk about another trade later. He makes less than Jordan Poole does. He's substantially better than Jordan Poole. So yeah, I think the whole question now is how different do you want the team to be when Jason Tatum returns to it? Do you want him coming back to like a facsimile of the championship team where like maybe you find another shooting big in there somewhere, you re-sign Cornette, and like you kind of play similarly? Or do you say that era is over, now we want to like really turn this over, start again? I think they're probably a little bit likelier to trade White, with the idea that if you trade White for like a few good picks, you could get Tatum back in a year, see what he looks like, see if he and Jaylen are like, are they still in their primes? Are they still as good of a duo? And then maybe decide from there, what do they need? What is the top teammate archetype that would help them as they get back to full strength? Let's go trade the stuff we got for Derek White for that. And even if that stuff is a guard similar to Derek White, you ideally want to get a younger one, because now like White is going to be 32 when Tatum comes back from that injury. Even if you get a similar quality of player, if he's 27 instead, that's a big upgrade. And we also just shouldn't dismiss Anfernee Simons is a good player, right? They could just let him go and reset their salary structure with the expiring contract. They also, like this year with Tatum out, if they're going to be competitive, I don't know what the plan is. We got to see what the next set of moves is going to be. But if they're going to be competitive, I think he's going to look really good in Joe Mazzulla's system with a lot of shooting around him. He had no spacing to work with in Portland. He's like deceptively fast. He's a really good closer. He can get into the paint. Boston obviously did not do that well last year, didn't do it well during the championship season either. That's a good guy to have. I wouldn't be surprised if either A, they played out the season and saw how he looked, or B, just extended him and said, like, can we get him at a good number? This is a good market for him. Maybe he doesn't want to go out into free agency. I'm just very optimistic about where they are. I think they could keep White and Jaylen and still feel pretty good about their short-term future, or they could get really creative. And like the other advantage of if you're going to trade Jaylen and or Derek White is like, now that Porzingis and Jrue are gone too, you start to get like maybe not tanky, but like it'd be kind of nice to get the 7 or 8 pick, right? Like even if it's not a top 3 pick, that's the sort of asset that they, given how good they'd been, just didn't think they were ever going to have access to again, right? Like say you trade Jaylen Brown and you get 4 first-round picks, you are of course getting 4 first-round picks, but you're also bumping your own pick from like middle of the first round to potentially higher in the first round. That's something that I would really consider. It feels like anything is in play for them.
So let's start with the actual returns, because I want to touch on something, on a point you just brought up about the fact that like they could really use some high value draft picks to help get the ship ready for the next run. So the big talking point about the Celtics coming up into the offseason was, are they going to have to attach assets to trade Porzingis, to trade Jrue Holiday? My prevailing notion was they would not, that they would, especially for Jrue. Yes, the contract is a negative value, 104 million over 3 years. I still felt that there's enough interest league wide, especially like, his reputation. A lot of teams just like the idea of having him in their locker room, that wouldn't be the case, and that at best they would come out with neutral, at worst they would come out with neutral value. The fact that they got Anfernee Simons alone really makes me wonder what the other offers were. The fact that Portland had to trade him and also include a couple second-round picks. So that's a home run for the Celtics, I think. They didn't save that much money, but it's okay. They did that in the Porzingis trade. But they didn't get any real like significant draft assets. They got 2 second-round picks. The Porzingis trade, they straight up just saved a bunch of money. So that really brings me to like really gets me curious about would they consider trading one of Jaylen Brown or Derek White? I would think so, more Derek White for a haul of draft picks, or at least like a couple real premium ones that are going to be pretty valuable to help. You go through this gap year. You're talking about maybe, it'd be nice to get the 7th or 8th pick. That's something that could maybe happen, like, unintentionally. They could go about the year, try their best. If things are looking kind of shaky, a couple more injuries happen, then they could go and pivot to that. But this team still has a ways to go, I think, before they can reorient this core. I like Anfernee Simons. I like the idea of him on the Celtics. I didn't really think about how Missoula's just going to let him rip. So I like it there. I think they're going to play things out with him first. No rush to extend them. He can extend for like, a little bit more than what he's currently making. I would guess Celtics, if they extend them, they bring him back at what he's currently worth. But I just think they gotta be sure that he's going to be a part of their next core first, play things out. But yeah, I'm just keeping an eye. I'm sure there's a price on either guy that if met, the Celtics would probably take it and then put him in a much stronger position for 27, 28 to reorient these picks and try to get the next, 4th or 5th guys that they just traded away.
We have fake traded Derek White so many times. I don't think there's really any benefit to us going through that again. Just to go through that list, we've talked about the Rockets, we've talked about the Warriors, talked about the Clippers. Like, there are a lot of teams that we could use him. Should we maybe go through the exercise and see who the teams for Jaylen Brown might be? I have a couple of ideas that I'll throw out there to you. The first is Toronto, not because I think it's a good idea, but because we know that they're crazy and we know they have no real roadmap. They kind of just want to get a really good player in there. That's the sort of team where I could see, like, after they went after Durant, they might just say, like, throw caution to the wind. Here's control of our next 7 drafts. Give us Jaylen Brown. I would throw San Antonio out there. I think they think that they're waiting for Giannis, or at least we think they're waiting for Giannis. But Jaylen is young enough that, like, you could put a substantial offer out there. Their offer would probably involve more player value, right? Where, like, maybe Devin Vassell, maybe Stephon Castle is in that. I don't know how much that appeals to Boston, but it's worth bringing up. Memphis is another one. We've talked about them as a blow-it-up team. I was into Memphis even when I thought Desmond Bane might have been the thing they would have traded for him. But now this could be kind of a pivot where they just take the stuff they got for Desmond Bane, turn it around, offer for Jaylen Brown. Now that's more expensive. You'd have to offload some salary that way. And you'd also have to figure out what to do with Jaren Jackson. But Memphis has been looking for this big wing for like half a decade now, where it was going to be Justice Winslow, and then it wasn't. Then it was going to be, I can't remember who else was
Zaire.
after that. Zaire Williams after that. They've taken like several swings, spent significant assets trying to find a small forward. If you put John Morant, Jalen Wells at the 2, Jaylen Brown at the 3, Jaren Jackson 4, Zach Edey at the 5, that's an interesting team. I don't know if that's a championship team, but it's an interesting team. And you do that without giving up many of your own picks. It's kind of an interesting place to be. Those are the teams that come to mind for me. Do you have any others?
So I would think Memphis, they're just deciding to kind of throw the white flag for this upcoming season. I don't think they're going to tank or anything like that, but I think they're looking at OKC and say, yeah, we're not competing with that. Let's try to focus on reorienting the roster in a spot where we could, or maybe by the time the roster is ready, maybe OKC will have declined a little bit. I never really thought about Toronto. Yeah, just same reason as you though. They just for the talent factor, I could see them trying to go for it. I think you brought up San Antonio. That I think that they're probably one of the more likelier teams, especially if Giannis isn't available. One team I thought of is Miami, where they could have fit Kevin Durant, but I just don't think they have the assets, even though they could bring in Jaylen Brown's salary slot. So then, we talked about
Miami. Hang on. Kello Ware, I think they might put on the table if they could get Jaylen Brown. You don't do that for a 37-year-old, but I think you might do it for Jaylen because he's so much younger and because, like, I know that they were playing him and Bam together a lot, they don't need a center, right? They can just have Bam as their lone big. So I understand not trading Ware to get Durant, but if you put Ware and all of your picks on the table for Jaylen Brown, that actually does kind of make sense to me.
Well, I like the fit. I like the idea of them bringing Jaylen Brown, but they could only trade 3 firsts, the 20th, 2 in the late 30s, 2030s, that is. Then where Jovic, I don't think that's really coming close to the amount of stuff the Spurs can offer. And that's not even including the second overall pick in tomorrow's draft. And then also Houston. I mean, it really feels like maybe both teams are like, they just seem like very natural trade partners. I mean, again, like there's still a pathway where the Rockets could potentially bring in Giannis. He makes the same salary as Jaylen Brown. So if you've been hoping that the Rockets can pair KD with Giannis, you could bet that they can do the same thing with Jaylen.
Ime Udoka really loves Jaylen Brown too, so that's something that could make sense. And like we talked about Derek White. My thought was like Derek White doesn't get you close enough to justify giving up those Phoenix picks. If you have Durant, Jaylen Brown, and then Şengün and Thompson, now you're kind of talking. Like now I might be really into this. And even then, after Durant ages out, you're still going to be really good. You might be able to talk me into that one. I don't know. Like I'm certainly not making the offer I would for Giannis. I'd still keep Şengün and Thompson off of it, but I would be potentially interested in that.
Let's move on to the Mavericks. I think, we're the Celtics. We'll see what they end up doing, but for the most part, I think they don't have to be too aggressive now. So the Mavericks, they didn't make any trades, no signings, no external signings, but they did a couple things to set up themselves for the future. First, last night, they extended Derek White on a 3-year deal that was originally reported. Sorry?
You said Derek White. They extended.
I'm sorry, Daniel Gafford.
Oh, well, they extended both of them, but yeah.
They extended Daniel Gafford on a 3-year, was originally reported a $60 million deal. Then it was reported it was actually 54, which falls exactly in line with the most he can get while still being traded. So they give him slightly above the mid-level, but below what like Ivica Zubac got last night. So I think that kind of makes sense for like Gafford. I think he's definitely a starter in the league. Definitely not like maybe like right in like average level of the best starters. And then Kyrie Irving declined his player option, his $43 million player option, and is going to re-sign on a new 3-year, $119 million deal. And I just want to show their cap sheet because it's really significant what Kyrie just did, because they were in a situation where they're above the second apron already. They are about they're deep into the tax and about like right above the second apron. If Kyrie opted into that $43 million amount, they're gonna have to either like cut Brandon Williams, but most likely they're gonna have to make a trade in order to shed money. And I was kind of anticipating that this was the road they're gonna have to go on, maybe involving Klay Thompson or Gafford or PJ Washington. Kyrie did him a huge solid here, where he's basically repeating the contract he signed 2 years ago with the Mavs for 3 for 19. And that puts them well below the second apron now. I'm projecting that they'd be about $7.1 million below, because one, if you do 8% raises and you could start it at this low, so you're talking about almost $7 million less. But then no incentives. Those incentives eat up into the apron. So now they have enough room not only to fill up the roster, use that whole tax pyramid level. They open that up, bring in a guard that they'll need. Look, I'm not excited about this. I think their window is shut because Kyrie's hurt now for most of the season, but just to show like what they've got going on now, they can now use that mid-level to bring in a stopgap guard without the need to trade any player, attach an asset to save money. And I would expect that this is actually the number it's going to fall into, because the Mavs in the past few years, that's what they've done. The full 8% raises. It's been very predictable.
Contract.
Yeah, normie contracts. They did the same exact thing with Najee Marshall last year. They did it with Kyrie Irving in his last deal. So I would expect that is gonna this. I would predict this is exactly what their cap sheet's gonna look like. So yeah, big favor from Kyrie to help him like that, and still a
Hold
lot of
on.
money considered he's injured.
Hold on a second. He didn't do them a favor. He gave up $6 million this year to guarantee himself 2 more years at similar money. Coming off of a torn ACL, we don't know what he's going to look like at
Hmm.
33 years old. He got a player option on the third year, by the way. So like if this year, like let's say he comes back in March and like looks good and they do whatever they're going to do, and then he mostly looks like himself again in the 26-27 season, he's going to opt out and get more guaranteed years. Like this is a great outcome for Kyrie. I know
Yeah,
like to him he gets to like feel like a hero. Look at me, I took a pay cut for the team. What a sacrifice. That's absolutely not what happened. This is a great outcome for him financially, especially in an environment where there's no cap space, right? The only team that like theoretically could have signed him away from Dallas were the Nets, and we knew that wasn't going to happen. So there wasn't a market out there, right? Like the Mavs did him the favor. It's not the other way around. They did him a favor in a way that helped them as well, at least if they're really going to go forward with this cockamamie scheme where they're going to have like 9 centers and power forwards on their roster. Now, like they're going to go get a guard. I mean, there are some interesting guys in that mid-level range. Chris Paul at 40. I don't know how excited I would be about him as a starter. D'Angelo Russell, Malcolm Brogdon, Dennis Schroeder. There are guys that they can sign who are like low end starters who can slide into a bench role afterward. None of those guys are that exciting to me. I mean, I like they are usable point guards, but they are really heavily relying too on like can you get good minutes out of Brandon Williams early in the year? I liked him a fair bit from what I saw last year. Can Jaden Hardy take a leap? He didn't take one last year, and there was every opportunity. The guard play on that team is a mess, and that's why like it's a good idea to get Gafford signed to this number where you can trade him if the opportunity presents itself. By all accounts, they don't want to do that, but like let's revisit that on December 10th when you're 500 and you have the 23rd best offense in the NBA. Like I know they really believe that like, oh, Anthony Davis is a power forward. How dare you say that he's a center? I watched every game or the better part of every game that Anthony Davis played as a Laker. I can assure you he is a center. He might not like being a center, but he is a center. So my philosophy there would be if you want to have other centers on the team, great. You don't have to play him, the entire game at center. But this roster you've constructed where he's going to be out of position basically for all of his minutes. And so is Cooper Flagg, by the way. Cooper Flagg is a power forward who they're going to play at small forward. PJ Washington is a power forward. They're probably going to play a fair bit at small forward as well. Look, if I were them, I would have like actually taken advantage of that logjam, traded Gafford or Washington before you had to pay them, and gotten a better guard that way. And like you can then use the taxpayer mid level to sign another 6'10 guy. Sign as many as you want. Who cares? I really think what's going to happen here is they're going to go through the early portion of the season with like a D'Angelo Russell type as their only guard. And it won't matter how good their defense is because they're just not going to be able to score points.
yeah. No, that's what I was saying. Is like I was getting excited just about the whole cap machinations, but I had to stop myself to say like, yeah, this team's not going anywhere. Like the window, this 2 year window that they put together after the Luka trade is shut as soon as Kyrie got hurt. I mean, it's shut as soon as they made the trade, but um, I just had a thought. If you're a team trading for Anthony Davis and you're afraid that he's going to demand playing power forward, I can't think of a better situation than the Warriors, where
Yeah.
you'd be playing him next to Draymond. Like, okay, here you can be the power forward.
I would match money with Jimmy Butler too if I were Golden State. Like if you could get Curry, Draymond, and Davis, I'd be really into that.
Yeah, I mean, you could call Draymond the center if that's all it is.
Yeah,
If
Draymond.
that's
Oh,
all,
Draymond will guard Jokic. He's fine with that.
yeah, it's just a title. Uh, but yeah, so now the Mavs are below the second apron though. They're gonna they'll bring in a stopgap guard. Uh, I mean, look, I don't really think this team is gonna do any better than they did last year. I think they'll be fighting for a play-in spot again. I think the pieces are still very messy together, and I'll be very curious to see how this situation develops towards the trade deadline. Where
The other
if
thing about this team too is like maybe they will be good. I'm not ruling that out, but if they are good, it's not going to happen until March or April because Kyrie's going to be out all that
yeah,
time. So even if you are, say you are the third best team in the West at full strength, say you're better than everybody but Oklahoma City and Houston. I don't think that's likely, but it's a possibility. You're still probably starting as a play-in team just because of all the time
yeah,
you're already missing from Kyrie. And by the way, when we talk about injuries, we talk about them so often as if everything that has already happened is set in stone, but nothing else is going to happen on top of that. This is just the starting point, right? They're starting without Kyrie. More guys are going to get hurt. And Anthony Davis, given his history, we have to acknowledge the possibility that, like, even in a good season, he might only play 80% of the games instead of 100% of the games. So, like, in all likelihood, based on the way they're set up, and like Cooper Flag, we're very excited about, but he is a rookie, and he's a rookie playing out of position. So, like, I would maybe temper my expectations about, like, how valuable he is to a winner right away. Long term, be as bullish as you want. But right away, I'd maybe be a little bit skeptical. They don't have much shooting. That's really going to hurt the offense. Even if they are as good as they hope, if you're starting from the play-in, which they might just by virtue of Kyrie's injury, the battle is so uphill at that point, right? Where you have to win your way
yeah.
in, and then your reward for that is like, congratulations, you've got to go to Houston to face Kevin Durant, or God forbid you have to go to Oklahoma and face the Thunder. I just, like if Kyrie were healthy, I could almost get behind this scheme. I just think it's such an uphill battle as they're currently set up.
Yes, that's I forgot to mention that, just that where they're starting, they have no Kyrie. That's why I think they'll be fighting for a play-in tournament, a play-in spot. Where if this team is in the playoffs, like you could make a case to me that they could beat the Thunder based on the way this team is built. But that doesn't matter if they can't get to the playoffs first. So I just think it. And then again, by the time Kyrie comes back, that's basically like a whole season gone. How's he gonna look? How's AD gonna look another year later? You're just getting a lot closer to this inevitability, I feel like, where they might have to just trade all these guys. So hopefully Kyrie can play at a strong enough level where this contract ages well and another team might be interested. We skipped the Portland side of things for the Jrue Holiday trade. Um,
What? Like,
I
what did
mean,
they do?
yeah, this is a trade that, like, first saw it, I was confused. I'm like, wait, they traded what to get Holiday? And they traded for Holiday, them? And then I just like I went to sleep, woke up, because we're already on fumes yesterday. Tonight I slept last night I slept a lot better, and I woke up, had clarity. I'm like, oh, this is really bad. I don't understand why they did this. This does not make sense to me at all. Uh like I understand the theory where okay, they thrived last season on defense once they elevated Kamara and Avdia and started playing Klingon a lot more. Okay, bring in Jrue, but what are you going for? Are you trying to just like make the playoffs? Because if you are, okay, maybe that gets you there. I kind of struggle to see if that really elevates them to even that. I guess they could be in the play-in mix. I don't know. I just struggle to see what the highest end outcome for this is.
I'm going to start with a very simple question. Who is coming off of the bench here? Because theoretically, you trade Anfernee Simons. The idea is we're starting Scoot now. We're starting Scoot. We're starting Shaden. They're going to be our guards. We're going to see what we have. But if that's the case, you can only start two of Jrue, Toumani Camara, and Denny Avdia. Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia right now are better players than Jrue Holiday. But Jrue is already like, we've seen some of the reports that he's maybe not thrilled to be going to Portland. You bring him off of the bench, a player of his stature. He's such a professional that he's not going to directly cause you problems, but you're also probably not going to make him super happy if he's coming off the bench. So, like, immediately my question is, like, what are you doing with Jrue? Because if he's coming off the bench, it seems like a lot to pay a bench player, especially
Yeah,
when, like, by the way, he's Jrue Holiday and he has the great defensive reputation. And I think in certain contexts, he is still a very good defensive player, but he's getting older. And as you get older, the first thing you tend to lose is speed. I don't think Jrue is as equipped today to defend small, quick guards as he used to be. And that's what Toumani Camara and Denny Avdia need, because they're both forwards who are better at defending big wings. I guess this makes you very switchable. That's nice. And I think their defense is going to be really good. Klingon was very, very good in limited minutes last year. And I like the idea of getting Simons off of the team because they needed to see what Scoot and what Shaden Sharp can do on the ball. I just don't think this was the Simons move. And the money is so atrocious, right? Not only do they have Jrue, where they're going to be paying him, I think, 37 in his age 37 season, they also still have Jeremy Grant, who has 3 more very expensive, not great looking years. I think he's at like, you can tell me the exact number, but it's in the mid 30s for his age 33 season at the end of that deal. Like, and by the way, that's when Scoot and Shaden start to get paid and Kamara too. And it's like, you're going to have a year there where you're going to be deep in the tax for a team that I don't know is a playoff team, which is not a great place to be.
So I'll answer your first question because I have thought about it. What exactly is a starting lineup? Like they have this top 6 now between Klingon, Avdia, Kamara, Sharp, Holiday, and Scoot. We saw last year whatever I don't even remember what they originally started with. I know it involved Jeremy Grant. I know it involved DeAndre Ayton. I know it didn't involve Denny Avdia. It changed. Whatever I'm gonna throw out is fluid. My feeling is they're gonna start Scoot and Holiday together. I think this is the year for Scoot. He's got to prove it now, and I think they're gonna give him an opportunity to play a lot and try to prove that. So then I think Sharp, he's extension eligible, assuming he's part of the core. He's gonna be starting. I think you got to start Klingon, and Avdia was the best player in the team last year. It's gonna be him. So I would get the feeling you bring Kamara off the bench, which there's nothing wrong with that. He's
made all defense last year. He was really good.
Oh, I know. But the thing about the luxury that is that you can have him come off the bench, like I'm guessing that's how they're gonna start it. I think the Scoot thing is like they really want to try to make it work. But we saw Chauncey. He's not afraid to change his lineup. He's not afraid to demote anybody. So if he needs to make the change later, he will. But in terms of the priorities, I get the feeling that's how they might want to go about it. I don't know. I could be way off on that. It's funny how we both just just assume, yeah, Jeremy Grant, $34 million a year, going to be coming off the bench. And he still got another.
And by the way,
3 years
deservedly
left
so.
on that deal.
He's not very good anymore.
Yeah.
Can we see that?
Yeah, that contract, trading for him, trading a first round pick to get him, re-signing him on that contract was a known goal. But look, the Blazers, they still have another move to make. They have $60 million in expiring salaries between Aiden, Robert Williams, Matisse Thybulle, who just opted in. They could still bring in I'm not saying they should bring in like a max level guy, but they could go ahead and do that if they want to get another pretty aggressive. I do think they'll do a little something else just to help fill out the bench a little bit because the bench is pretty weak just by looking at it. Like they have a lot of bigs, but yeah, I just going back to the Jrue trade. I don't understand why this was the move they decided to make still. Like, again, I get the theory, but how do you not consider like the age and contract aspects?
It really, it didn't make sense to me. I guess now the thing I'm doing if I'm them is, well, first of all, if anybody will take Grant off my hands, I will, please, by all means. But they need shooting. I would like to see them, could they turn the Robert Williams contract into a shooter somehow? I guess Duncan Robinson is a pretty interesting player for a lot of teams because of the partial guarantee. But could you trade him into a mid-level kind of salary shooting? Could you give him away, open up the mid-level, and then sign a Sam Merrill or something like that? So I'm thinking you've got to get shooting. I also just want to take a second to talk about the general manner in which Portland conducts business. And I've noticed a trend here where it really feels like they are always too late when it comes to moving their guys. Damian Lillard is the clear, obvious example, right? Jeremy Grant is another one. There were the reports last year that they wanted 2 first-round picks to move him. Maybe it was to the Lakers, maybe it was to other teams. And it's guys, that contract is terrible. Nobody's giving you 2 first-round picks. If you can get 1, you should consider that a win. And now Jeremy Grant is I don't want to say untradeable, but that is a distinctly bad contract that there's just not going to be much interest in. To get no first round picks in an Anfernee Simons deal, maybe Jrue Holiday had first round pick level offers out there around the league. We've talked about why we're not crazy about having him there, but I have to imagine if they had gone to Orlando at the deadline and just said, like, give us matching salary and your original first round pick this year, which turned out to be number 16 for Simons, I think the Magic would have been like, yeah, we'd be happy to do that. I think they could have traded Simons for real value for like 2 full years. They should have done that the moment they drafted Scoot Henderson, because they've been holding Scoot back by having another high usage guard in the starting lineup this whole time. Like, now they get very little for Scoot. Now, maybe they look at Jrue as valuable enough that, like, okay, we're getting something, but like they have halted Scoot's development, or at least slowed it down, by having Simons for the first 2 years, and then to not get good value on top of that for him. Like, they really, as a trading team, have kind of let great be the enemy of good. And I think this is something that we both believe. I think a lot of the time it's much more important to make the move that you want to make than to get the most possible value out of a move, right? Like, I think the Nets are another good example of this, where like they won too many games last year because they were too slow to move. They didn't move Cam Johnson. They didn't move Nick Claxton. The Blazers are another example of this, where they're like, it is so important to us to get absolute fair value. We're not making a bad trade. And all the while, you're just letting these assets become less valuable. You're winning games you don't want to win. You're taking minutes and shots away from players that you don't want to take minutes and shots away from. I just don't think that it's a smart way to conduct business. The one thing I'm going to wrap up with here on Portland, this is, I think, a quietly pretty significant part of this trade. Jrue Holiday is, like, as far as like players will tell you and coaches will tell you, like the most beloved teammate in the entire NBA. Does that mean I would have made this trade? No. I think the way they're thinking here is that this trade is almost an investment in Scoot Henderson and Shaedon Sharpe, where Jrue Holiday is going to be so beneficial to them as a veteran in that locker room, sort of like Chris Paul was for Shai Gilgeous-Alexander or for Devin Booker, that's where you're going to get the value out of this. My contention would be, number one, you don't have to pay significant money to do that, right? You don't have to pay out 3 years and $100 or so million to get a good leader in the locker room. Just sign Garrett Temple for the minimum. But then on top of that, I'd like to remind the Portland Trailblazers, your head coach is Chauncey Billups. They don't need a star legendary guard to teach them how to do that stuff, because you already have one in the building. So we are both in agreement here that we just really dislike this.
I want to add on to some of the trends that you pointed out, that in Blazers and trades, yeah, they do wait too long. Even the previous regime, which this current regime is kind of a part of, they waited too long on Dame, I think. I understand, not trading your franchise player unless he explicitly asks for a trade, but seems like, yeah, they wait a little too long for a lot of players, and that's like a notable example. Another trend is that they don't like trading for draft picks. They just want the players that they like. Like, if they would, like, in the end, like, I think the Blazers came out reasonably okay with the roster and the players that they put together, but I think there is a universe where they're in a better spot, where they have more financial flexibility. They were able to rack up more draft picks by taking on bad money instead of these contracts. In the Dame trade, like, they only took on picks because they kind of had to, I guess. Just like, especially when you look at what the Bucks had to offer, it's like, okay, here's what they've got to offer: Jrue and a couple picks. It was like one pick, and then they're able to turn Jrue into two more. And like, you didn't get that much in draft equity. I can't say it's like the most valuable draft equity even.
I
They just
disagree
got
with
a
you on
bunch of
that,
guys.
just because of the Giannis situation. There is
Yeah,
upside there,
yeah.
and at the very least,
Now,
there's upside that you can hold hostage to them. Where,
yeah.
like, if they trade Giannis, you can say, like, "Oh, you're trading Houston. You're trading Giannis to Houston, eh? Like, those Suns picks look pretty nice. You should flip them to us for your own picks back."
Yeah.
So I disagree with you slightly on that. I think the Dame trade was better than most people say, but I do broadly agree with what you're saying.
Well, so here's the thing with, at the time, I don't
Mhm.
think, obviously you could, in retrospect, you could even said at the time, yeah, Giannis is eventually gonna leave, but after they got Dame, I don't think anyone was really had their mind on that. Because especially because he extended after. So now, yes, those picks are looking a little bit more valuable, but that's more like a down the line thing. Because I think if the Bucks are going to be held hostage with Giannis, it's probably the Pelicans with the picks. That those are more relevant, like this year and next year and the one after. I mean, but they got like a couple picks. They immediately cashed one of them in, or their own first round pick to bring in Avdia. Like they know what they want. They go after the players that they want. They don't value these picks. And in this holiday trade, it's kind of like, okay, look, like they definitely overpaid on the value portion. Every Simons is far more valuable than Jrue Holiday. I think the main reason I'm I'd like to know what the market was on Simons though, not because I wonder if there really was a strong market, and it's not because teams don't like him or anything, but most teams are pretty settled at guard. And
Yeah.
after Orlando got Desmond Bane, it was like, well, who actually needs the guy? Like the Lakers were a team I thought would make sense. They got Luka. That's not happening now. So I just think that like that guard is so saturated, especially at that salary he's making. I I don't know if they could have gotten like a first round pick. Like he's definitely worth one at least. I don't know if that was out there. So the Blazers, yeah, they should have acted earlier on him if they cared about prioritizing the value, and instead, no, we just want Jrue Holiday. That's our guy. We don't care about the value proposition aspect of the deal that like most other teams probably do care about.
How many different flavors of this conversation have we had? Because we've talked about it with Trae Young, we've talked about it with John Morant, we've talked about it with LaMelo Ball. High usage guard at below the like top level is a really hard position to trade because basically not everybody, but most teams have their like offense centric guard. But that's why I think you have to move quickly if you're going to trade. And like they should have known the moment they drafted Scoot Henderson. We have 3 guards that we have a lot invested in here. We should probably try to trim that number down to 2 as quickly as possible. And that's when you would have had more team control on Simons. It's when he would have been younger and had a little bit more upside. So I don't think there was a first round pick offer out for him right now. I do think there was one in the past, but like all of this that we're talking about, like we should make this very, very clear. None of this matters if Scoot Henderson and Shaden Sharp don't become like franchise players, or one of them does, right? Like there are
Yep.
2 versions of their future. There is the version where either Scoot or Shaden becomes an all-star. And if that happens, then things start to look pretty interesting for them because they do have those Bucks picks to trade in a few years. They have the good role players in place. Now you're talking about something that gets potentially interesting. If neither of those guys become stars, then nothing else they do matters. And they are just in the purgatory of winning 37 to 41 games per year unless they do something drastic. So
Yeah.
the way I justify this for them, and I don't agree with this, I've already made this point, is I think this trade for them was about how can we give Scoot and Shaden the best possible chance to grow into whatever the best versions of them are going to be. Personally, I think that was either going to happen or it wasn't. Getting Simons out of the way helps because they needed playing time and they needed shots. But I think that was going to happen or it wasn't. I don't think you needed to do this to unlock something in that.
Yeah, I think it's definitely one of those like that. Those two are probably their best chance of being those types of guys, but it's probably I don't exactly see it. I could see them maybe getting that guy. They do need a guy, maybe in a trade. Um, how do you feel about Porzingis to Atlanta?
Kind of interesting. I'm more interested in this than like I thought I would be with Porzingis. My issue is you can't trust him medically. Like if I were running a team, I just don't feel like I could get him thinking, this is my starting center. I'm relying on him. I'm building a team around him. So I was sketchy about a lot of the teams that were interested, where you heard like the Pelicans, and I just found myself thinking, like, really? Them? They're going to do this again with another injury prone guy? You heard the Lakers, and it was like, you really want to bet the Luka era on this? Atlanta makes a lot of sense, though, because they have a Kongwu, not only who can be a starting center, but who can also do different things. He's very switchable. They can play together a little bit. And he's also locked into a pretty favorable long-term deal from a team perspective. So you are kind of set at center whether or not this Porzingis thing works. So the idea here is going to be, can we like maybe get him locked into an extension at more of a luxury price than a necessity price, where now he's at 30 million for this year? Could you lock him up at like 20, 22? Where at that point, if he's out, then you just have a third string center at a minimum who like can fill in while he's out, and like you feel okay about that. That's fine. from a basketball perspective, I think this is a really nice fit. We've talked for years about how all Trae Young needed was a bunch of athletic wings around him, and they got those guys with Jalen Johnson, with Dyson Daniels, and Zachary Risache. But the trade-off to getting all of that athleticism and that defense was that those guys can't shoot. So you have to find shooting somewhere else. It has to be at center, and both Okongwu and Porzingis can shoot at center. So you were looking for a pretty narrow pool of players. There aren't that many, like defensively viable, good three-point shooting centers. They got two of them, and they're good defensively in different ways. They can play together. They can play apart. They give you some schematic versatility. I like what they did, and we're going to talk about this as well, I assume. They don't have to be done because they're like $30 million below the tax line. They have this $25 million trade exception from the DeJounte Murray trade. They could use that and bring in somebody pretty interesting. Or they could re-sign Karis LeVert and then use the mid-level exception. Like, they have some more interesting moves to be made here. It's not as splashy as Desmond Bane, but I think the logic here is similar for Atlanta, just at a much lower price, that the East is pretty open. Let's take a step forward and see what happens. Can we get maybe a top 4 seed and see what happens at that point? The basketball fit makes sense. I think they hopefully can get an extension done at a reasonable price. I like this. This is good for them.
I like it for the price. They essentially turned two of the quote unquote salary fillers that they got back for DeAndre Hunter, for Bogdan Bogdanovic, to aggregate them, put in the least amount required to bring in Porzingis, who's making pretty high amount of money for a guy who probably isn't going to play too much in the regular season. I like it for a couple reasons. Aside from the price, so like one, they've been rumored to be interested in getting a stretch big. They've been linked to Miles Turner, which is a complete long shot. I would be surprised if he leaves the Pacers despite the Halliburton injury. So by bringing in Porzingis, he just finished his 10th year, had this strange illness that knocked him out for kind of just limited him in the playoffs. It's the same kind of situation that the Celtics had when they brought in Porzingis. Obviously, the Hawks aren't on the cusp of being a championship contender. But what I mean by that is they're bringing him in, and he's on an expiring deal. And you mentioned the idea that they're probably going to try to extend him, probably something a little team friendlier. When the Celtics traded for Porzingis, they got him at like $36 million, and then he ended up doing 2 for $60. I would guess Porzingis, especially with all his injury history, starting to enter the later parts of his career, he's going to be motivated to get some type of extension done now, even if it means making less than what he's currently making, which is probably going to be what he's going to definitely be looking at, some type of salary reduction. So by trading up for Porzingis now, you get him at that high salary, and then you drop him to whatever that amount might be next year. This year is the window for them to do that, because they did the DeAndre Hunter trade, because they did the Bogdan Bogdanovic trade. They cleared so much money where they have the opportunity to bring in an expensive big like Porzingis right before Dyson Daniels' contract ends. He's on the last year of his deal, only making $7.7 million. So that's going to balloon up. So you're kind of like trading contracts. You get Porzingis on a premium now, and then you get him on a discount later. And then you have your center rotation secured for the next 2-3 years, hopefully. I really like it. And you mentioned they still have another move to make. I don't know what exactly that is, because I think they have such a great top 6 now.
I can tell you who I think it's going to be.
It's going to be role player. It's going to be
I know
role
exactly
players.
who it's going to be. I figured this out. They're going to be the team that signed and trades for Nickeil Alexander-Walker above the mid-level. That's how they're going to beat this. That's what they're going to do. They're going to fit him into that trade exception. And now they're going to have another really good defender, but one who's guard size, since all of those wings are bigger, and probably like Dyson Daniels can defend guards. I like Dyson Daniels more in an off-ball rover role than like making him guard the 6'2" fast guard. So I think Nickeil Alexander-Walker is what they're going to do. And I think that's a really interesting fit.
Yeah. So for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, let's say a team like the Lakers want to sign him outright, try to steal him from the Wolves. They could try to offer him the full mid-level exception. Sure, it's at 14, goes for 4 for $60. if the Hawks really want to bring him in and outbid what a full mid-level type offer, that's where this DeJounte Murray trade exception comes in, where they could sign and trade for him, not at this $25 million amount, but maybe you start him at like 15, 16 mil, and then you go up from there. So that's the way of beating the market for him or any other free agent. That was probably going to be the avenue, and if they were able to get Miles Turner to use that trade exception. But yeah, like they just have to, like, they're going to use one of this stuff for sure, whether it's the full mid-level, which could also be a trade exception. But more importantly, I'm guessing the DeJounte Murray one, because it is the biggest. They can do the most with it. And it's the most pressing of their biggest ones, where it expires within the next 2 weeks. So they have a very interesting opportunity to replenish their bench. For people thinking, oh, well, maybe, you start looking at $25 million players. I would be surprised if that's the route they go, because they still need to fill up their bench. They need a point guard. They need a couple forwards off the bench. I mean, they'll re-sign Karis LeVert, I think. But yeah, they're going to use this to fill up the depth, and they can get some of the highest end role players with all these available exceptions.
Yeah, they basically get to beat the market on whatever mid-level free agent that they want, right? Because only the Nets and like maybe the Pistons, but probably not, can get above that mid-level number. So they can kind of look at this and say, any free agent that those two teams don't want, we have first dibs because of that trade exception. So the other thing they could just do, you could just re-sign Karis LeVert and carry that mid-level exception into the season and use it as a trade chip, maybe. Or if you bring Alexander Walker or another free agent in through a sign and trade, you still do have the mid-level exception to bring into the season. So they have a lot of optionality here. I think they're going to improve their depth further. I think there's going to be one external player who's meaningful that they don't have yet that they will add in the next 2 weeks that I think is going to be good. So I think given how open the East is, I'm like pretty optimistic about them. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they should be. I think I said this yesterday. I think they should be above the play-in now, like just a little bit above it, at least for now. We'll see how Zachary Ricochet improves, if Dyson Daniels improves. I'm excited to see Trae Young play with a true stretch center.
He's never
has he
done
ever
that,
played?
right?
Yeah, I can't recall if he's had played with a center quite like this.
Well, he's only ever
S-
played with lob threats. And Porzingis is
yeah,
a lob threat too. He doesn't move very well. Like, you're not going to use him in the same way that you use Clint Capella, but you can throw him up lobs near the basket because he has such a wide catch radius with those long arms that you're kind of getting the best of both worlds in that sense. So I think it's a really interesting fit. And then the last thing I'll say, the worst case scenario, say you just like can't get an extension done and he walks after the season, then all you've really done is use the number 22 pick to cap dump the last few years of Terrence Mann, which is 3 years, 47 million. And I don't even think that's a very bad piece of business if you're the Hawks, because I think Terrence Mann is overpaid. So if you've at the very least saved yourself some money right as Dyson Daniels signs his rookie extension, like, that's a good trade too. So I think this is a trade that's immediately good and then has a chance to be great on top of that.
do you think players ever think about, man, I just got traded with draft picks for the team
Right?
to get off me? Terrence Mann, in a span of 6 months, was traded with 3 second-round picks. So the Hawks traded 3 second-round picks to get off Bogdanovich to get Mann. Okay, so I had it mixed up. They
But can I
actually
do you
got,
one better here though?
yeah.
2 years ago, the Clippers made him unavailable in James Harden negotiations. Remember that? Remember when the Clippers said you can't
Yeah.
have Terrence Mann for James Harden, and now he's getting attached to a first-round pick?
Well, it was that extension they gave him.
Yeah.
They gave him that extension, I think, with I think he still had a year left on his deal, like 2 years left on his deal. I might be getting stuff wrong, but yeah, I think they should have played things out a little longer with him. They wouldn't have, but at least they got 3 seconds for him. It worked out for the Clippers.
How do
Not
you
so
like it from
much.
Brooklyn's end?
Well, I have to think they have something lined up. They've got to. Like, there's no way they're gonna have, like, I know even the 4 first-round picks, that's not completely foreign. We saw the Rockets 4 years ago use all 4 first-round picks on Jalen Green, Alperen Şengün, I believe Usman Garuba,
Ty
and
Washington.
Josh Christopher. Yeah,
Oh, then which year was Ty Washington?
the
I was
the
a
the
big
one
fan.
after. Ty
I was
was
a
the year
that
after.
one didn't work out.
So 5 second-round picks plus a second. I think they've got something lined up.
Well,
Like
they have to be what we assume, right, is that they're thinking we want to use all of these picks to jump from 8 to 3 and draft Ace Bailey. My personal opinion, and maybe they've negotiated this and I'm wrong, and for what it's worth, Sean Marks and Daryl Morey do have a trading relationship. Obviously, they've done it a few times. Is I don't think Daryl is the kind of GM that like wants quantity, right? Like he would want quality. If he's moving down from 3 to 7, he wants one tangible thing, not 3 or 4 maybes, right? Like we were talking about this off air, like a trade that we think could happen would be Herb Jones and number 7 for number 3, because I think the Sixers would look at Herb Jones and be like, that's somebody who materially helps us on a good deal, who does something that we don't have. Like that's the sort of trade down that makes sense.
yeah.
So I don't know if you're going to use all of these picks to trade up for Ace Bailey, but there are a lot of creative ways that you could use these picks. You could trade them for future stuff. You could trade them for players, whatever it is you want to do. You can't bring 6 rookies onto your roster next year. So they're going to do something.
Yeah. It's just I'm looking at the draft order and a lot of the teams they're surrounded with. I just can't imagine those teams interested in also getting extra picks.
Can you also, like, by the way, we've talked about this a few times with Oklahoma City and Houston potentially trading present picks for future picks. Something that I wonder about is if that market is going to get oversaturated because so many of the picks are now concentrated within such a small number of teams, where like there might be a lot of teams in this first round that want to trade a present pick or multiple present picks for future picks. And that trade just isn't going to be as available because so many different teams want to make it.
Yeah. No, they got to do, I think they'll do at least 2 things. I would guess I might be wrong. I would guess they don't have more than 3. Might be off. That's my prediction. How do you feel about Jordan Poole in New Orleans?
What are we doing here, man? Like Joe Dumars is like, I thought it would take you like at least through the draft and free agency to do something I vehemently disagreed with. That Pacers trade, by the way, to not even consider the downside risk in making that deal during the finals is like, I don't know what, like, I don't know what you're thinking there, man. That's a bad trade. I don't get what they're trying to accomplish with this Jordan Poole trade besides get younger, right? Because like, I don't know what Jordan Poole does for you in the present that CJ McCollum doesn't, but you take on the extra year of money, right? Like what they actually did, what I suspect is the case, they did save for the 25-26 season, like $5 million. That's wiggle room under the tax. Like maybe you can use the tax pyramid level. I don't know that they will. I think they're just going to pocket the cash, but like maybe you could. You have more wiggle room for other stuff. Fine. But to do that, you've taken on $40 million in 26-27 money. And what I suspect, given their history, is that they're going to dump money at that point too. Are you paying assets to do that, right? Like the reason you do this, if you're doing this, is you either think that Jordan Poole or Saddiq Bey or both of them can be meaningful additions for you. And I think any version of that is kind of scary, right? Like the thing that came to mind for me was, are they bringing in Saddiq Bey because they think they need another wing, because they think they're going to trade one of their wings on draft night because they're jumping up for Ace Bailey, right? Like getting Saddiq Bey kind of makes sense if you're trading Herb Jones to Philly and you have wing minutes open. That being said, Saddiq Bey is kind of just worse Ace Bailey, where he's a 6'8" dude who wants to shoot a lot. So I don't know that that would really be a fit. I don't know what Jordan Poole does for you as a player. That's all that enticing, right? He's kind of just a gunner. They really, like, if you go up and down that roster, there is not much playmaking on that team. There isn't much passing there. Jordan Poole doesn't really help you with that. He did have a good scoring season. He did have a more normal season, right? Like he wasn't a meme last year. He was just kind of a standard bench gunner, scoring 20 points a game, shooting reasonably well. But I don't think he's a starting caliber guard on a good team. We saw if that was the case, that would have been the case in Golden State, and it wasn't. DeJounte Murray coming off of this torn Achilles, we don't know what he's going to be. They're paying those two guys like $70 million in the 26-27 season, and neither of them may not be starting caliber guards. Like, forget about the salaries for a second. Just answer me this. Of Jordan Poole, DeJounte Murray, and Jose Alvarado, who is the player that you want most? Because I think my answer, given the Achilles to Murray, is Jose Alvarado at $4.5 million.
Yeah, and potentially whoever they might get with the seventh pick, if that's a guard. You make a great point about just, what are you doing? Like, are you really meaningfully getting better going from CJ to Jordan Poole? Like, yeah, CJ's older, like he doesn't fit on their timeline. But if you're clearly bringing him Poole in because you think he's better than CJ McCollum right now. I don't think he's meaningfully that more impactful at all. So in that case, like, why don't you just extend CJ? He's making 33, maybe get him to take something like take 25-30% less if you really care about having a scoring guard. I think there's something else lined up though. Like clearly this is a present move. Yes, they save some money now, so it's financially motivated. They used up a lot of flexibility for next year because CJ and Kelly were expirings, and now they're bringing in Poole and Sadiq, who are under contract for next year. But even though they don't really have any big expirings now, I am. I just have like an inkling in the back of my head. They're gonna try to package DeJounte Murray with some draft picks for a big man. I don't know who that is. I've thought about one in my Pelicans mock off season that I think they might want to try to go for, but clearly they're trying to be competitive now. They're like, I think that was kind of the tell. This trade kind of revealed that, and they have a glaring need at big right at the center right now. So I
Can I
think
just
there's
say
something
though,
else lined up.
I think Yves Missi is good. He's like, I think it might take him another year or two, but I think he's good. And like, if they get a center, I'd be trying to trade for him. Or if they drafted Maluwatch, I'd be trying to trade for Yves Missi. I think he's good. The other thing I'll throw out there, I don't think this is likely, but if you are trading DeJounte Murray, maybe another thing you could do is DeJounte Murray in number 7 for Paul George in number 3, where you're not just taking on Paul George carte blanche like the Nets might. You're like giving away your own bad contract to do that too. Maybe that's something they have lined up. But I do agree. This feels like a precursor to something. I just don't know what exactly it's a precursor to.
The I had them trading for Sabonis in my Pelicans mock off season, not because I think that'd be a great idea for them. It's just something I think I could see them doing. But it was like for CJ and future picks. Maybe now it's like DeJounte and I suppose even more draft equity because he's got the injured Achilles. So if you're the Kings, you're doing a soft reset. You're getting a couple picks. You're taking a step back, but you've got DeJounte. So maybe by the time you're ready to go, because realistically, the Kings probably wouldn't want to be out of it for more than a year. You've got DeJounte just, in the chamber getting ready and healing. Um,
Let's talk about their
yeah.
guards though. If you have DeJounte Murray, Malik Monk, DeMar DeRozan, and Zach LaVine, that's the funniest backward. That's just 4 different gunners, right? Who all just want the
Yeah.
ball and want to shoot. DeJounte Murray, by the way, I don't know. Like the Achilles is probably going to be damaging long term. I think we should also kind of say he was not good last year. Like they traded a lot to get him. He did not play well when he was on the court. He did give that really interesting interview recently where he talked about some of the problems in that New Orleans organization. Maybe if you send him somewhere better, the Kings are not that, but maybe if you send him to a normal team, he could bounce back a little bit. But it's worth pointing out that like right now, I view DeJounte Murray as negative salary. I don't know if the league agrees with that, but last year was not encouraging on really any level.
If he was the guy he was in his last year with Atlanta, that's a good contract. But yeah, the way he played plus the injury, yes, no, that is a negative value contract, which is probably why it's going to cost a couple picks to get off him. I think, especially if they are going to bring in a big man. I like it for the Wizards. They didn't get anything for Poole, but the way to look at it is they got a first round pick for taking Poole on, and they were able to get off him without giving up anything significant. They only gave up the 40th pick in this draft. So just great work by the Wizards. They have a ton
Also,
of
cap space,
flexibility.
100 million in
Yeah,
cap space.
yeah. I mean, I think I wouldn't. Maybe they use the cap space. I get. Well, okay. Let's. I wasn't gonna go too deep on the Wizards, but I guess I'm just wondering, when do you think they'll actually start to like accelerate a little bit on this timeline?
Well, they still owe that pick out to the Knicks, top 8 protected this year, so they can't do this year. And then I think it kind of depends on like how do they do in the lottery next year? How much do their guys develop? we'll kind of see from there. I'd heard some people suggest that like maybe they just use it as a dumping ground, and the funniest possible outcome for that is what if they took back Bradley Beal? The Suns sadly don't have anything to pay them to do that with, but that would be kind of hilarious. I also just like having some grown-ups in the room, right? They get Marcus Smart, they get Chris Middleton at the deadline. CJ's another guy like that who's professional, who's going to be helpful to have around those young guys. But then also, like, say you're at the deadline and somebody is trying to dump bad money. Those are expirings that aren't just expirings. They're expirings attached to like interesting players. So maybe you could get some money going out for them on the other side, right? Like if somebody wants to attach a pick to a bad deal to get those guys. So they're in an interesting place. I think they're still in asset accumulation mode. I don't know what you're going to do with $100 million in cap space. It never hurts to have it, right? Like it never hurts. If nothing else, you like just sign some interesting players to 1 or 2 year deals and like get some people in your building, see what happens. Go out into restricted free agency, by the way, like try to steal some guys or at least make some other teams sweat when it comes to keeping their own players. So like, if nothing else, I didn't look at any of the players here as like core principal players for their teams. So to me, this is literally just the Wizards got off of $40 million in the 26-27 season. Nothing that happens on the court really matters. So that's a win for them.
Well, Sam, let me tell you, I have thought about Bradley Beal going back to the Wizards in a trade. I originally thought like Poole and Smart, but Poole's gone. If the Suns are able to get below the second apron, the first apron, then maybe there's like a Middleton and Smart deal that they could do if the Suns want to add a couple more twos to the roster. I've thought about that. I think if there is a Beal trade, I feel like that's the most logical destination. Then the Wizards can buy him out if there's a buyout to be done. As far as $100 million in cap space, they're not gonna. I would guess like that's just so much money that it's gonna be really hard not to realize that cap space. But I ask about like expediting their timeline because I still think they're so far away. They don't have yet like a cornerstone. They don't have a top guy yet. We don't know who that's going to be. In which case, they're probably going to continue to use this cap space for taking on more bad money, getting more draft picks. They're now going to be on year 3 of this. So once you get to next offseason, that means they're entering year 4. So at some point, they are going to have to speed things up just a tiny bit. I just think seems so conflicting because they're just still so far away. But I would guess they're probably going to more likely try to take on more future long-term money by trading some of these guys they just got, rerouting Middleton, McCollum, Smart, not necessarily to good situations for these players, but in deals where they're taking on just taking on like another Jordan Poole type, who's got another year left on his deal, trying to get a pick for that.
For what it's worth, they were better down the stretch, right? Where like, I think in like January, February, they were like 5 games worse than anybody. They were far and away the worst team in the NBA. And then the Jazz ended up with the worst record. They were like kind of competitive down the stretch. Let's see how Koulibaly and Sarr and those other young guys develop. Like maybe one of them pops and emerges as your guy moving forward, or the guy they draft this year, maybe. So like, I think a lot of this just depends on how good like their best young prospect, whoever it ends up being, becomes. And they'll kind of go from there, and they'll let it happen organically, and they'll let that dictate where they end up. But like, I think they've broadly managed their team pretty well under this new Michael Winger regime.
No, they've done an excellent job all throughout these past 2 years. That Bradley Beal trade just looks better and better as time
But they
goes
only
on.
have one controlled swap out of that, right? Because the Nets have 28 and they have 30 is the only one that
No,
they have?
that 28 swap is the only one that the Nets have a stake in.
Yes, but I'm saying the one, like the only direct swap they have with Phoenix, Washington, is 2030, correct?
No, they have 20. They had 24.
Oh, they have 26.
26.
No, I apologize. They do have 26.
Yes.
But we don't think of that as valuable because they're going to be bad. Now, it is valuable because on lottery night, anything can happen. So you kind
26 will
of
be
bad, lottery balls. But you're not thinking we're going to jump up from like, we're not thinking it's going to be a big number jump up. It's just like another chance at the lottery, essentially. So yeah, they actually do get some value from that next year. And the worst of those two picks is going to go to Memphis.
No, I think you kind of put it right that when you're looking at where the Wizards are going to be, yeah, that 2030 is going to be the most valuable one. Maybe the only one of value. Sam, we made it. We made it over an hour. Nothing has happened. Apparently, as we closed out our Celtics conversation, Shams
I saw that
was
and I was wondering, do we watch it?
Sham. I know, like I couldn't really focus on what it was saying, but now I'm seeing it, and I guess they're like, okay, Jaylen Brown and Derek White are like they're lit. They like they are getting calls on them, which suggests it's probably more significant than it appears. So I'm glad to know that we weren't just recklessly speculating on those guys. And
Good on Brad Stevens for actually like being creative and saying like, no, we have a chance here to really remake our team. We're going to take it. Brad Stevens is so good at this, by the way. Brad Stevens was, I think, a top 3 coach in the NBA for his entire coaching tenure, and he's a better GM than that.
yeah, very, very few coaches go down that trajectory. A lot of them are not better executives.
We got to do a whole episode on Doc Rivers, the executive.
And apparently I see this tweet going around about Shams telling SVP on the air he's not going to sleep, which let's see what happens. It's the eve of draft night. We made it. We discussed everything. Wild 24 hours. Sam, thanks for going on. I'm just going to say it because I'm not going to ask you because I already know what your answer is. Read CBS Sports, everyone. Sam is cooking up a lot of work. He's working overtime, putting in a lot of analysis, reactions to all the trades that happen. He's reacted on everything. Go check out his work on CBS Sports and follow him on Twitter at Sam Quinn CBS. And everyone, thank you for watching. Subscribe to Third Apron wherever you get your podcasts. Subscribe to the newsletter. I'll probably write up something on some of these trades. And make sure you're following me on Twitter and Blue Sky as well. I've been reacting with the salary cap analysis to all these trades. Celtics, Mavs. It's been a lot of fun covering these two teams these past few days. I will be active and back. I'm going to be streaming tomorrow during the draft. If you guys want to watch me just update my cap sheets, that's basically